Ole Miss headed to Death Valley. It's a night game in Death Valley. Woo-wee. Crazy SEC matchup at night. Ole Miss is favored by 3.5. Over/under is set at 63.5. Vegas is predicting whoever has the ball last going to win this one. 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Very excited to see this matchup because I think these two teams are a whole lot closer than what our preconceived notions have led us to believe earlier in the season. I think LSU is a little bit better than you can't overreact too much in college football because if you do, you would have jumped off the LSU wagon early in the season, right? And I'm not saying LSU's going to the playoff or win a national championship or anything, but I think they're a little better than what we thought. Ole Miss, on the other hand, if you looked at their first 4 games, you would have thought they're winning the Super Bowl, the World Series, the national championship, and 3 Heismans, right? I mean, that's just everybody's like, wow, this is what it's like when you just buy the best team in the country. And then they ran into a formidable team, and things didn't go so well. Last week, Ole Miss bounces back against South Carolina and what I think is a good defense, but scored 27 points, and it was never a close football game. South Carolina, never really threatened offensively to do anything in that football game. But my whole point is the longer the season goes on, the more I feel like Ole Miss is a defensive-led football team, and I'm pretty sure that they are at this point. This team is going to rely on that defense. They're going to be able to hit some plays offensively, but I I don't think they're the well-oiled machine that we thought they were in the first few games. Now, Jackson Dart's been really good. You can see the numbers there. You see all the passing stats, second in the country pass yards per game, second in pass plays 10 plus yards. They're very very explosive through the passing game. That is no doubt about it. The key to victory here for LSU is going to be keeping everybody in front of them. And you could honestly kind of say the same thing for Ole Miss's defense, but we'll kind of get into that in a second. Very, very good passing attack here, as you would come to expect for Lane Kiffin and one of his offenses. Trey Harris has been unbelievable this season. 52 receptions, 885 yards. That's almost as many yards and receptions as he had all year last year. 5 touchdowns so far, 17 average yards per reception. Juice Wells has been pretty good. 17 receptions, 371 yards. Did have a fumble last week. South Carolina fans and him kind of had their own little game going on in a game within the game last week. And Caden Lee's been a nice surprise. This is a really good passing attack here. And the run game leaves a little bit to be desired, Mason. It's I don't know that the offensive line is necessarily built to run the ball up the middle. I think this is one of those teams we kind of talked about that is going to have to throw the football around to open up things to be able to run it. And Matt Jones ain't it at the running back position. I mean, he's a guy he's still pretty young and doesn't have a lot of experience. So maybe one would expect that. But as of right now, Matt Jones ain't the answer. Henry Parrish is trying to do it all himself. And I mean, by the end of this season, man, he's going to be war slap out. They brought JJ Pegues in. He's ran a lot of short yardage situations, scored a few touchdowns, and helped out in those, like I said, short yardage situations. The 325x tight end is really really tough to stop and got a lot quicker feet than what you think. But the rush game has been a little bit of a bugaboo for this Ole Miss offense, and it's hard to sustain drives and keep the sticks moving whenever you can't get that 3 or 4 or 5 on first or second down. The playbook is limited at 3rd and 10, and that's exactly what this Ole Miss offense has got to try to avoid in this football game, in my opinion. Um, and I think they're going to have an opportunity to do that. But as I said, it's not been a great rushing attack. What do you think about this offense so far this season for Ole Miss?
I think they've been really good. Surprisingly, Ole Miss is led by their defense this year. I don't, I don't know that, I don't know that many people would have said that going into the season. I
No.
don't think I was thinking that. I mean, I knew they would be good. I was wondering how they would gel and things like that. But that's not to say that the offense is bad or not even great. I mean, I do think that they're pretty good, but that speaks more to the defense. Um, they do have some problems on the defensive line. I think that the interior of the defensive line is getting beat too much. Diego Pounds, I've seen him get beat a few times. He's supposed to be,
You mean
one of the
offensive
best.
line?
I'm sorry, yeah, on the offensive line. He's gotten beat a few times, and overall the interior has not really been there. Um, we knew going into the season that they were going to struggle on the offensive line, or at least this would be the weakest unit on the offense. But they really struggled against Kentucky, and then against South Carolina, I saw them play a little bit better. They weren't perfect by any means. They definitely got beat. That's a really tough South Carolina defensive line you're facing. And I think that now, when you go against LSU, this is an opportunity for this O line to build some confidence because um, they're not going to be nearly as good as the past two that you faced, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it won't be hard. I do think that the linebackers present some challenges. You're going to have to get to the second level if you want to extend the run game. So that could be a little bit of a challenge once those offensive linemen, break their first level and get to their second blocks. But I think up front for the defensive line, things are going to be a little bit easier. Maybe they build some confidence this game, but overall, I really like Jackson Dart. I think he is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, at least statistically. I like what he presents, and I really like Henry Parrish in the run game. He's been extremely effective when given the opportunity to run. Again, going up against this defensive line, maybe this is the opportunity for him if these offensive linemen can win some assignments. But yeah, overall, I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about this offense. It's humming. You know what I mean? They had the down week against Kentucky, and then came back against a similar defense and played much better. Scored another 2 touchdowns. I mean, it was pretty good. It's a pretty good little outing there.
Yeah, and they didn't need to go throwing down the field at the end of the football game, I guess was kind of my point too with the South Carolina game. I mean, when you're up, what was it, 20, whatever, by 20 points, I guess, necessarily, essentially at halftime, you don't need to come out and throw the football around. So, um, this game right here, I think is just about being able to stay on schedule. LSU hasn't been particularly great at creating havoc. Um, So I think if you can just stay on schedule, then your offense is going to be fine here. Um, and Vegas is obviously predicting that, considering the point total for this game is over 60. Um, Defensively for Ole Miss, it's been a really good season. There's not much to pick on here. I mean, just to be honest, I there isn't anything to pick on so far. Number one in tackles for loss, number one in sacks. 24 sacks so far this season. That is crazy. Third down conversion allowed, 23.96%. The game that Ole Miss lost this season, the winning team scored 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally nothing to complain about as far as the defense. I mean, would you like to add anything, Mason? Because I mean,
Well,
they've been really
I mean,
good in every aspect. I mean, pass yards here. Okay, I will add one thing. Let me add one thing. And I'm worried about this in this football game, so I'm glad I remembered to say this. I've seen the last couple of weeks against Kentucky and against South Carolina, even um, the secondary getting flagged. Now, more so against Kentucky, but several times in that Kentucky game, the secondary got flagged for holding on for dear life, essentially, getting a wide receiver and putting him in a seatbelt. Um, that could be a problem here, and Ole Miss can't have that. Now, they're probably told that if somebody's going to just blow past them, go ahead and grab them. They probably told them that. And I don't know, but that could be a problem this weekend. I'm not sure what Chris Hilton's status is with his injury, but Kyron Lacy, you know, you let him get going. You talk about an offense getting to humming. Kyron Lacy can put a team on his back now and go out and score 3 touchdowns if you don't watch out. So if there's one area that I do have a little bit of a complaint, it would have to be in that area there in the secondary. Very highly penalized. Ole Miss has had a pretty good bit of penalties all season, really averaging a pretty good bit of them per game, as I saw dissecting this team a little bit. But what are your thoughts on the defense?
Well, I mean, it's been really good. They've got individual um, players who are getting a ton of stats, which is tough to do when you're not on the field that much. But they've been really effective. All these guys I'm about to list were in the top 100 in these stats, but and I think I mentioned it in the early preview, but I'm gonna say it again for safe measure for those who didn't hear it. Trey Amos has eight pass deflections and two interceptions on the year. That's really good. Trey Washington plays opposite of him. He's got five pass deflections. Linebacker Chris Paul, 41 tackles, seven tackles for a loss. Suntarine Perkins, 6.5 tackles for a loss. JJ Pegues, 6.5 tackles for a loss. Princely Hughes, 6 tackles for a loss. Walter Nolan, 6 tackles for a loss. Jared Ivey, 5 tackles for a loss. And then finally, linebacker TJ Daughtery at 38 tackles. I think I hit every position on the defense there.
Wow.
They have all been playing extremely well, and they're flying around the football. Obviously, with all the TFLs I just mentioned, they're getting behind the offensive lines and getting a really good pass rush. Um, that it's tough to beat teams when they've got a good defensive line and Ole Miss, and make no doubt about it, Ole Miss has a really good defensive line. Did see Walter Nolan go out in the game against South Carolina. It
That's
seems like
right.
he's ready to play, but kind of monitoring his status. That's a big loss if he's not able to go this week. He's definitely one of the best players on that D line.
No doubt about it. This LSU passing game is the strength of this offense. We'll jump right on into LSU. I don't think LSU is even going to try to run the football very much in this game, Mason. I really don't. I don't think they're going to try to. Now, you know, obviously they're going to at least a few times, but I don't think that's a huge portion of the game plan here. And I think they're going to have to pass a little bit to set that up. And so maybe you see it a little bit later in the game, but I mean, I think there's one path to victory here, Mason. It's throw that damn football and don't turn it over. And we've seen Garrett Nussmeier in his career when he gets zoned in. I mean, he can be really tough to stop, and uh, they've got the wide receivers to do it. Can Mason Taylor get involved here? This has been an explosive offense. This has been an offensive led football team. Um, Seventh in the nation passing yards, eighth in the country 10-plus yard passes with 67 of them. 20th 20 plus, 29th and 30 plus. I mean, you can pretty much look at any statistic. The weakness is the run game, no doubt about it. Durham has been kind of really the only shining light in that running back room for the most part. I guess you could say Jackson at certain points, but this hasn't been particularly a great running team. I worried about that in the offseason. The running game numbers looked amazing last year, but it's because you had a Heisman quarterback that could just take off anytime he wanted, and it looked like the defense was stuck in like they were frozen in the VCR or something. I mean, just stuck there, and he'd run right past them. He made this offensive line look like they were a lot better run blocking than what they really were last season, and we kind of saw that come to fruition a little bit this season. Um, but I don't think LSU necessarily is a team that has relied on the run game a whole lot anyway. What do you think about this LSU passing game?
Oh, it's been really effective. I think Nussmeier has stepped in and played as advertised. We were concerned it being his first full year starting and whatnot, but he looks like a veteran out there. He's got a really good deep ball. I feel like, and I think he's playing really effectively. Surprisingly, Mason Taylor has been his number one target, or at least pass catcher. He's got 28 catches on the year. Aaron Anderson comes in second with 27 catches. He's also leading the team in receiving yards. And then Kyron Lacey is sort of your red zone threat. He's got five touchdown receptions on the year. And has been, I mean, as advertised, at 352 yards on the year,
Really good.
looking really
Yep.
good. And what's also interesting about this LSU team that was so reliant on Neighbors, and Thomas last season. Well, this year they're spreading the ball around a pretty good bit. They've got 5 players on the team with at least 12 catches, 5 players on the team with at least 100 yards so far this season. So that's been pretty good to see. That means that your quarterback has a really good rapport with the entire unit of the wide receiving unit, and he's able to be on the same page with a lot of these guys. So I think that says a lot about Nussmeier, and obviously the wide receivers for getting open, but really like the LSU receiving core. You mentioned it; they probably have a slight advantage against Ole Miss on the back end of their defense. Are they going to step up though? Because I do feel like Ole Miss is going to be able to just kind of sit with 3 or 4 up front, and then or send 3 or 4 up front, and then sit the rest of the defense on the back end. Nussmeier is going to have to be extremely accurate in this game, but he's shown an ability to do that. I think that he could very well kind of put the team on his back and win this football game.
Yeah, I think LSU is going to be able to move the football in this game. I don't think it's going to be. Um, I think Ole Miss better, be able to move the football in their own right because I think the offenses are going to be able to eat in this one. That offensive line we talked about it for LSU. You've got your 2 stars of your offensive line there on the edges. The center, that's the new starter on this offensive line. They've allowed 2 sacks all season, right? 4th in the country. That's really good. 14 tackles for loss allowed. That's 5th. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't run the ball as much as some others. They just don't. Um, but this offensive line, they're good at what they do. They're good at pass blocking, and um, you know, uh, they got their work cut out for them this weekend, though. There's no doubt about that. This will be one of the best, if not the best, defensive line that they've faced this season. And we watched LSU early in the season kind of struggle a little bit on the line of scrimmage with USC, and the longer that image stays stuck in my head, and the longer the 2024 season goes along, the worse that looks, right? And so that does scare me just a bit. I've been saying since the offseason that I didn't think this offensive line was quite as good as what everybody thought they were. Um, they are that good in pass pro, but haven't been able to get a push running the football at all this season. Um, let's talk about the defense. I think we nailed down the offense. It's pass to win. It's pass to win. The defensive returners here, Harold Perkins, he's obviously a key player in this football game as well as Greg Penn, and then Major Burns there on the back end. LSU returned a bunch of guys this season, but it was a lot of guys off of a bad defense. What you bring in new is the defensive coordinator Blake Baker. And let's look at some of the numbers. We did this earlier in the season. I believe it was for what game was it? I can't remember what game it was now. But we looked kind of like a progress report. We looked at what LSU's defense was doing in 2023 versus what they're doing in 2024. This week we've got another look at it here, and you can see the improvement starting to really take hold, Mason. We're seeing all the numbers looking better at this point. Every single one of them look better, minus QB hurries, and that's so marginal, right? Half a QB hurry per game difference there. Um, you're seeing a lot of gains on this defense. I think LSU is one of those teams. We haven't seen the best of this defense, and we'll probably see it get a little bit better every single week. They're going to have their work cut out for them with a really good wide receiver unit. But I think the biggest thing in this football game is play to win in the red zone if you're LSU. Ole Miss is going to be able to get their yards in the middle of the field. I don't think they're a huge threat to be able to run the football and keep the ball away from you the whole time. Keep everybody in front of you if you're this LSU defense, and I think you're going to have a shot to possibly win this football game. But Blake Baker is obviously making a big difference here for the LSU Tigers in 2024.
Yeah, well, I mean, I mentioned the fact that the Ole Miss offensive line has struggled. They'll have an opportunity to kind of improve on their outlook for the season in this game against the LSU defensive line. But we can turn that right around and say that the LSU defensive line has an opportunity to eat against this Ole
Yep.
Miss offensive line. And that could very well be the case in this game. This would be a prove it sort of game for this LSU defense. I mean, if they go out here and hold, uh, do what Kentucky did to Ole Miss, I mean, which uh, who would have thought that we would be talking about, can LSU be as good as Kentucky in this game? But
Defensively,
but
yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, I mean it is kind of crazy, but yeah, I mean that it's possible. I mean the jury or the book is out there now. LSU doesn't have the dudes up front that Kentucky does. They just don't. Kentucky's got
Right.
one of the best defensive lines in the country, definitely at least in the SEC. But can you play a similar style and get some success if you're LSU's defense? I think you probably can. Now, um, for the deficiencies they've got on the defensive line, which I think that they're just average. I don't think that the defensive line for LSU is bad or anything like that. I really like their linebackers. The issues have been on the back end for this defense. I do think that there is a possibility that the Ole Miss receivers just kind of go off and Jackson Dart just kind of goes off. But this is a prove it game. Make no doubt about it. For LSU, they're probably tired of hearing how bad their defense is and this and that. Blake Baker, I'm sure, is tired of hearing it. Um, he's going to want to make a statement in this game, and I don't know, man. That's playing at night in Death Valley as well. I mean, the defense is probably going to have an advantage there, or definitely going to have an advantage when it comes to the crowd noise and things like that.
Yeah.
How much can they take advantage of that? That's the biggest question to me. But maybe they bow up. Maybe they bow up in this game and limit what Ole Miss is able to do. The more I think about it, the more I think it could happen. To where you're limited them, probably not to 17 points, but you know, can you limit them? Can you keep them under 30? I think if you keep them under 30,
That's the
that
number.
you really give your offense a chance to go out and execute. But yeah, mid 20s, I feel pretty good about LSU's chances.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest improvement here on this defense is, in my opinion, and the most crucial one is opponent third down conversion percentage. Yeah, nearly 45% last season, and you're all the way down to 35%. And this plays really well into the game plan against Ole Miss. If you can stop that run, which we have no reason to believe that LSU can't stop a run and an attack that's not that great. Um, you're going to be able to get Ole Miss into some second and 10, third and 10s. I think there's going to be touchdowns and punts in this football game. I don't think there's going to be long, methodical drives. I think it's going to be touchdowns and punts. If one of these teams could figure out a way to run the football once they get a lead and play some keep away, that would probably go a long way to securing a victory. But I don't see either one of them really being able to do that. Um, let's get into our predictions here. I'll come right out and say it. I've got LSU, the home team here, plus 3.5. If it was anything under three, if it was 2.5, I'd probably take Ole Miss. But I think there is a decent probability that LSU wins this football game. And I think LSU, as I said, the perception doesn't match what's actually coming out there on the football field. We not many people have watched LSU football since uh, that big matchup at the beginning of the season. And perception is that Ole Miss is this national championship contender, and in a year where nobody looks like an elite football team so far this season, like the team to beat, they possibly could be. But this is a tough ask right here. Going on the road at night at LSU, this is going to be as raucous gets. Give me the Tigers. Give me the big eye on the field there, and give me that LSU crowd to be able to really, really make a difference in this football game. And I think this LSU defense is going to play their best game of the season.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I'm kind of with you as far as against the spread. Probably leading LSU in this one, but make no doubt about it. If this game gets out of hand, I think it's going to be Ole Miss that's winning and kind of running away with it.
I agree.
I don't think there's any way that we're seeing LSU win by two scores or anything like that. I think if LSU wins, it's going to be a dogfight. And it's going to be really because they're playing at home. I think that that's really the huge advantage here for LSU. How big is that home field advantage? Is it 3 points or is it 6 points? Um, Playing at LSU at night could be a 6 point advantage. So take with that what you will. I like Ole Miss to win the game. I don't see any reason to bet against them right now. As far as winning the football game, just straight up. But I do think it is going to be a close game overall. It's going to be a really fun game, and I think a team wins it by 1 to 3 points, no matter which way it goes. And there is a really good chance that LSU is on the right side of this. I could definitely see that, especially like I said, if the LSU team keeps it under 30, keeps Ole Miss under 30, then I like their chances in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a de facto college football playoff eliminator, Mason, with the teams that each of these teams have left on their schedule. It's hard to believe that either one of them could take their second loss here and still make it to the college football playoff. It would be that much harder. We'll see what happens in Death Valley Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern. Can't wait.